massive percentage of people watching this channel are not subscribed. That's 86.5% of watchers are not subscribed to the channel. Please subscribe. It helps us to get more guests and reach more people who need help, and to make sure that women know that they are not alone. Hello, so today's guest is Diane. Diane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm Professor Diane Rasmussen. I am the commissioning editor and journalist for UK Column, which is an independent media organization which has been around for almost 20 years. I'm a former academic, and I think that is part of why I'm here today, to explain why I am now a former academic and I am now a full-time journalist with UK Column.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite surprised. I've learnt something already, because I only heard of UK Column when it was like during all the lockdowns and nobody was allowed to speak.
Yeah. No, we're celebrating 20 years next year since Brian Gerrish started it. So it's
Wow.
definitely the original kind of platform. And Brian was one of the original people to be cancelled, I believe, all those years ago. So
Really? Wow.
oh yeah, in a sort of a political council and government situation, which he's talked about in other places. But yeah, no, we've been around. Well, he's been around for a while, and I'm really just thrilled to be part of it as my my new career going forward. It's fabulous to have a truly free speech platform, and we are not supported by any corporations or anything, so we have no bias. We're completely supported by our members and donations by those who watch us. So we truly appreciate any support we can receive, because we don't get any we don't get any TV license money. We don't get any corporate money. We don't get any. Yeah, right, and exactly. So, we are truly able to speak freely, which is, in this day and age, as we know, a very rare opportunity, especially to be an actual journalism media company, and to, even though we are constantly shadow banned and fighting YouTube and off and on, we are always available at our website, which is ukcolumn.org. So just to say, before I forget, that if sometimes our YouTube channels are there and sometimes they're not, right now they are, which is great. But you can always watch us. We have news 3 days a week now, and we have interviews 2 days a week, and we have other podcasts in the evenings. Currently, that's our current sort of lineup, and we have written articles. So we have quite a bit of content out there that people may not be aware of. And as the commissioning editor, I'm responsible for commissioning and editing all of our written material, which is quite in depth. And some wonderful research and journalistic pieces that we publish, and I present usually Mondays. I'm one of the presenters on our Monday show, and I do my own interviews as well. So this is a bit of a treat for me today to be interviewed rather than being the interviewer.
Yeah, it's really good. Have you noticed that there's less put your teeth in. There's less censorship since Elon Musk bought X and like Twitter, because I think there's more pressure on the other social media platforms.
I think it's interesting what's been happening. We got our original YouTube channel back, actually just in the past few weeks, and I realized that last year I was part of one of the reasons why we got taken off our original channel, which had many more followers, because we had to sort of create subsequent channels. So every time we got one taken down, we'd start a new one, and that's been going on for a while. We got our original one back, and last year, I looking at the things that we were being censored for were absolutely nonsensical, because there was one where we got a strike on YouTube for so-called medical misinformation, and I was actually using the World Health Organization's own data to just ask the question about why there were excess deaths in high-income countries in 2021 after the vaccines were rolled out. And I didn't make any conclusions. I just said this, look at these countries having excess deaths, middle-income countries and low-income, I wasn't even coming to any conclusions, but it was the own official data from the WHO. And then that was a strike for medical misinformation. So, yeah, I never make any claims that I can't support with government policy or, official data, because I'm not going to go there otherwise. We source everything. We don't ever make claims. Like, there are some alternative media channels that I will say they make claims, or they fear monger, or they try to get people emotional and worked up about something. But we don't do that at all. Everything is completely evidenced and sourced through show notes that we release with every new segment and everything that we do. So it lets me be able to sleep at night a little bit better, knowing that I'm not just saying things that may or may not be able to be proven.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think that's
really important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That's
like that trust as well, because like during lockdowns, that was when I kind of went, what on earth is going on?
Yeah.
Like, what on earth? And I kind of reevaluated everything that I thought I knew about the world.
Oh, yeah.
And realised what they'd been doing for years, and it kind of, like, once you start looking at one thing, it leads to something else. And I found that it was, like, in the beginnings, especially, I didn't know who I could trust. Like, my sense of trust for news was just like, well, that might be true or it might not, but I don't know. And I don't trust it, so I'm going to wait and see if I see it somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it would take me a long time to try and work out what was true and what wasn't. And I think I've still got that skepticism now.
Well, I think that's healthy. The problem is that the major media powers in this country and other countries, they are the ones who feel that they are the ones who are going to tell us what is true. But if you look at some of the work, like, for example, journalist Sonia Poulton, who's a lady I admire greatly, Sonia has done a lot of things to kind of show how, at least in the UK, all of the sort of the major heads of the government, the media, the Church of England, all of it, they all work together in lockstep to create the narrative that they want. And those are the machines that push the propaganda forward, and they're all working together and telling us, well, this is the truth, when, well, actually, let's tear things apart a bit and unpack what's actually going on. And that's what UK Column had done so well for so many people back in 2020, is because they were, I mean, at the time, Brian Garish and Mike Robinson and the other guys who were there, I was just a member at the time, but looking at what they did for people like you and me and so many others who were saying there's something weird here. They were so good at pulling back the fear and the propaganda and the, what they were imposing on us, and saying this isn't right, and here's why, and here's the things that they were finding about the fear campaigns, the mind space documentation, the Spy Bee organization, all that stuff that Brian Garish was talking about back in 2020 was all government policy, all completely available. And what can we do to increase the fear? And that's what they were writing on for so long. I think we're seeing now that more and more people are starting to question whether or not they know exactly what's going on. They're saying this, why are they still trying to make people line up to get jabbed? Why are they still, why is this still going on? And more people seeing either their health has declined in the past few years, or they've lost family members. More and more people continue to so-called die suddenly, well before their time. And we, at UK Column, we're continuing. We will never abandon any of that. Any of those people who now maybe didn't see it then but are seeing it now are more than welcome to come and join those of us who are still trying to seek the truth. And we're not saying that we always have the truth. We're not saying that we're ever always right, or that you should only listen to what we have to say. But what we are trying to do is provide some things for you to look at yourself. And I know that if you want to do your own research, you're automatically labeled a far-right conspiracy theorist and you should go hide in a corner. Right? But that's part of the message. That's part of what they're trying to do, is discredit us, for those of us who are trying to ask what is actually going on, trying to find answers, working together to do that. And that's the exact thing that the people whoever is pulling the strings are trying to. And the thing that scares them the most is when they feel like they're starting to lose that control. So that's what we need to keep doing is asking the questions, looking at the evidence.
But that's exactly what made me take notice. It was when they started calling me names for asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought, well, they're calling me anti-vaxxer and all this because what was it, a lockdown denier, whatever the terms were at the time. And I was thinking, for asking questions, I'm not allowed to ask questions now. Well, who else have they done that to? And then I started looking at all of the big names who'd been cancelled, like Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins, and just anybody who was smeared. I started listening to what they were actually saying rather than what people were saying about them, and that's what made it. And I think a lot of people are doing the same. Yeah,
and that's where. We have to be careful with being aware of. It's easy to question yourself. It's like I was going through that as well. Mm-hmm. Like in 2020, when I was still in the academic system, and I was watching everyone else around me fall for all of it without even questioning it. And there was something telling me this is weird. This isn't this. None of this feels right. But I was looking at everyone else.
It was weird how people responded though. If you remember, I would say something to someone like, oh, but this, and they'd go, oh, yeah, I know about that, but I'm still going to have it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
There was no logic behind what they were saying.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was really, And when I was telling people, when I finally started telling people about halfway through 2021 that I wasn't going to get it, it was some of the answers were so funny because I thought that I was going to lose friends in a way that like, oh, well, you're an anti-vaxxer, I don't want to be friends with you. But some of the worst ones were like, oh, well, that's okay. You don't have to get it because I've got it and therefore I will protect you. And I never asked you to protect me. It's fine, if and it doesn't. I don't think it's supposed to work that way anyway. I'm not a medical scientist, but that doesn't. Yeah. Anyways, so it was just interesting to see how far they went with buying into all of it. And I will say that it was a medical reason that truly woke me up. It was when they first started rolling them out, and it was actually the BBC, if you can believe it, that said, oh, the AstraZeneca has the tiniest little risk of this very, very rare blood clot. And I was in 2013, I had a blood clot, a very serious blood clot, DVT, in my leg from taking the pill, which I was taking as so-called treatment for endometriosis. So they always say, well, it can happen to 1% of women who take the pill. So as always, medically, I was the 1%. And I still have long-term damage from the blood clot. My circulation, my lymphatic system is still messed up. My leg is not ever going to return to normal from the clot that I had. But the thing about having a clot is that once you've had one, you're always at higher risk of having another one. And so I called my GP, and when I heard this, and I said, what do you think? Because I've had a blood clot. What do you think about this? And he said to me, well, any medical decision is risk or benefit. Is you have to weigh both to make a decision. And he said, in your case, you're young, you're healthy, and this is coming from, let's say that you believe that COVID was the thing that they said it was, which I don't believe it was. But at the time, he said, well, you're at a higher risk of dying from another blood clot than you are of dying from any sort of respiratory illness. And so in your case, don't take it because we want to protect you from having another blood clot. So what I think happened was because the government and everyone, all of the media, everyone was so determined to push all this on everyone, and people were just lining up and doing it without thinking, maybe I should talk to the GP. Maybe I'm 25 years old and healthy and I'll be fine if I get this so-called virus thing. Maybe I don't need to do what they're saying, but everyone just did it because there was so much messaging that they were just going out and doing it, and also because they wanted to be able to, get back to their lives, or they want to go to a concert or spend a week in Tenerife or whatever it was, that they just did it. And
they wanted to do the right thing as well, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what that we were told, was that this is the right thing to do. Protect yourself, protect your grandmother, protect the world. NHS is always out to help you. The government loves you. Like, none of this is
protect the NHS as well.
Yeah, protect the NHS.
The NHS is supposed to protect us, not the other way around.
Yeah. We have all the dancing nurses that did all those elaborate dance routines, and I'm not sure they were actually nurses. All those things that you look back and you think, what were we doing? And one of the most powerful stories for audiences when I speak, not just on the column but in other events, is when I talk about when I was still in the academic world. So my background in libraries, information, media, communications, and I was actually involved in an initial pilot project with some leftover funding that was available for what they called fighting vaccine misinformation. And so I worked on that for a while with the help of an assistant. And then that money we finished using up all that money, and then they came back to me. This was in Scotland. They said to me, well, we're going to continue to jab people for the foreseeable future. So we'd like to offer you £350,000 to start for the first year. And then in future years, if it goes well, to help promote the jabs to young people. And I had a few sleepless nights thinking about that. And I went back to them and I said, I'm not taking it. I'm not going to do it. Because inside, I thought, if something happens and I got someone to take the jab, and I'm not a medical, clinical person, and I somehow said, oh, it's great, it's safe and effective, and, we made the best TikTok videos, whatever, to get young people to convince to line up to do it. I'm complicit indirectly. And I realized I didn't have enough information at the time to know whether or not that was the right thing to do. So I turned it down. Yeah. And that year, I was due to go up for promotion to full professor at the university I was at the time, and I was denied promotion, even though I met the criteria. And one of the bits that they gave me in return of why I didn't get it was that I didn't have the right kind of funding. So you tell me what that means.
You didn't have the right kind of funding?
Mm-hmm. Because I had declined that money. I had plenty of funding from research students, that international students who were coming in paying a large amount of money for me to supervise their PhDs. I had other research projects, had a huge publication record, all kinds of committee involvement, leadership roles, loads of teaching. Students liked me, but I was denied promotion to professor, so I moved universities to become a professor. And that was kind of when all of this started, which I guess is part of the story I'm here to tell today. Was when I was declined promotion, another position became available at another university in Scotland, and it was right in my area, and I applied for it, and I got it, the offer. I took it back to my university where I was working at the time as a senior lecturer, and I said, this other university is offering me professorship, because sometimes you can do that where you can bring it back to your current university and they can consider whether or not they will give a counter offer to keep you. But in their case, they said, nope, sorry, bye, not interested. So I left and started in January of 23 at my new university in Edinburgh. And that's when I think that probably what happened with the money I turned down was obviously not good for me. But then things got much worse once I moved to Edinburgh, and I don't know if it was a lot. There were a lot of factors I think that contributed to it. I'm not necessarily directly blaming the new university itself, although there were a lot of organizations and institutions that kind of led up to it all. But I guess maybe we can go. That's a good way to kind of go into what happened to me starting in 23. Once I finally, after working for 20 years, and all I ever wanted to do was be full professor, and then I made it, and I was just so happy that I felt like all of this work, moving across the ocean, you know, all of the sacrifices that I made personally, professionally to get to where I was, and then what happened to me from there. It's still hard to find words for what I went through. So I'm not sure where you want me to go from there, but I guess that's a way to kind of go into it.
Yeah, so you were denied the opportunity to become a professor in a university that you'd worked for a long time. You got this counter offer, this like an opportunity, so you took it, but then it started going wrong. So
yeah,
what was happening around that time?
Yeah, so I started working for the new university in in January, and then in April I went to a conference that was, you know, my field of librarians. It was a conference for mostly for university librarians, which is what I had been in the past before I became a full-time academic. And I was invited to speak on a panel saying, "Oh, Diane, you'll provide an alternative perspective," which I was always kind of known for. It didn't used to be quite so dangerous as it became, obviously, because I lasted that long at least, for providing different perspectives on things, which I still do. And so I went to this conference, and the point of the panel was to discuss, although it was clear that a lot of these people already had their minds made up about what this meant, was whether or not the act of academic referencing and citing, which is what you do at universities, you cite people and you write references and you put them in. The question was whether or not that was a racist and oppressive practice, just to cite and reference people. So, critical theory.
I can't believe we're even asking those questions.
Yeah, and that was my point. And I went into the session and I said, well, you know, because the point was like, well, it's not inclusive to cite in a British way to, for example, overseas students, because they might not do it that way in their own country. But I was like, but they've come to a British university. Right? So they need, if they're going to get a degree in a Scottish or English, whatever university, they need to do things the way that it's done in that country, right? And so I said that, and I said, so that was racist apparently. I also said, well, it's not oppressive because it's actually respectful to previous writers to credit what they've done. And it helps people in the future find things that they might want to read because you've cited it. And it's just, that's what we do. We credit previous writers and we help future readers. And that's our job as academics and librarians, to support that.
It's about providing evidence and to back up what you're saying.
Yeah, and they were like, well, you know, the formatting, you know, like people in this country might not use a full stop, or they might not use capital letters. I'm like, whatever. This is not, the point is that if I went to a university in another country with a different culture and a different language, I would not expect them to accept my work if it was American or Canadian or British, which, you know, I have connections in all three of those countries, but I wouldn't expect somebody in China to accept my work if it was written in an American or a Canadian or a British style, right? I think that's only fair. So that was the first thing that happened at that conference. The second thing that happened at that conference was there was a talk about serving disabled students in libraries, and the conversation came up about this identity politics language, right? So the argument was saying student with a disability versus disabled student. So identity first is disabled student, person first in identity politics is student with a disability. So do they identify by their, person or student or by disability? So if you say person first, then it's student with disability, person with disability, or the other way around, disabled person.
Yeah.
So my partner at the time was disabled, and he was, I asked him what he thought about the ideas of this, and he's like, well, first of all, I'm still disabled regardless of whether or not disabled comes first or student comes first. And also, I have other things that I identify with that are positive characteristics, my other abilities and things like that. And so I just put that idea forward on Twitter. And long story short, that led to a formal grievance against me over several months. So I was just being respectful of sharing his opinion about his entire life with disability. And so what happened was I put that on Twitter. I offended people. One of those people worked for my university at the time as a librarian. And she was the one who, eventually filed all this against me. So I came back to work the following week after the conference, and I had a letter from the conference chair saying that I had violated the conference code of conduct by offending people. And
It's actually in the code of conduct that you can't offend people.
Yeah, and apparently I offended people by sharing my opinion and by sharing the opinions of a disabled person about disability.
How can you test ideas in a university without offending anybody?
Yeah, and so I wrote back to the conference and I said, okay, well, in that case, it was the first time I'd ever been to that conference, and I said, okay, well, I guess I won't go back to that conference again, and I said that to them. And I made my line manager at the time aware of what had happened, and she saw the tweets, and she said, I don't think you did anything wrong. There's nothing to worry about. So eventually it came back to me, though, as I had a feeling it would. I got a call later. She called into my office, and my manager did, and she said, well, HR has asked me to speak to you informally about what you said in your tweet. She said, well, I don't believe you did anything wrong, but HR wants me to speak to you. I'm like, okay. So why are you speaking to me? Well, I just want you to say that, HR wanted me to do this. I'm like, okay. And then
It's not my fault. It's someone else's fault.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you want me to do? Okay, all right. And then a little bit later, I was asked to go into mediation with this person and with HR present. And then I said, well, I'm not going to mediation because this is not a staff issue. This happened at a conference at another place outside of Scotland. It was actually at Cambridge. And so why would I go to mediation? This is not a staff issue. We didn't have a fight. We don't even actually work together because I was in an academic department. Mm-hmm. She was not. So what do we need to mediate? And so I refused that. And so then because of their, the dignity at work policy, I think is the name of it, she said, eventually she filed a formal grievance against me for whatever she felt offended about. And so that really increased my stress. I got really sick. And I just, so that was by the time the grievance process went through, it was November by this point, by the time the university came back and said that the grievance wasn't upheld because they said that I didn't do anything wrong, and that it was, all the charges were released, and there was also some ridiculous charges in there that really didn't even make any sense. When she was accusing me of things I didn't do, like she tried to accuse me of gross misconduct by saying that I had logged into my partner's email and sent her an email under his name, which never happened. And she said it was gross misconduct because she was accusing me of using university IT equipment to do this. Stuff that never even happened. Gross misconduct charges. Yeah. So that by that time I was relieved, but I still felt like things weren't over because I had been getting, I wouldn't say I was crossing any lines, not that it should matter, but I was getting help from Free Speech Union and eventually Academics for Academic Freedom. I became a member of the Edinburgh branch as on the steering committee, and I was kind of trying to get my head around what academic freedom actually meant, freedom of speech. And I wasn't saying anything that was wrong on Twitter, but my academic Twitter, I didn't have a huge following, I had a couple thousand followers, but I was starting to question things more and more as a result of what I had been going through. And I started to speak out a little bit more about gender issues, for example. So shortly after I was cleared of the charges at the university, I got a letter from one of my professional bodies where I was actually the incoming president. And they said, as the incoming president, we want you to be mindful of what you're putting on Twitter because you are sort of indirectly representing the organization. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They said, well, you've written some inappropriate tweets. You're getting anonymous complaints about inappropriate tweets. Okay, well, which
anonymous
tweets?
Complaints.
Anonymous. All of these were anonymous complaints, other than the formal grievance, and I knew who that was. Everything else was anonymous. And I was like, okay, so who are these people and what are the tweets? and so when they first sent me this letter, I didn't even know which tweets were the problems. So they sent me back a spreadsheet of the problematic tweets. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One was
a spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet.
That so it must have been long then.
Yeah, it had all the information, the time it was posted, exactly what I said, a link to it, any photos that were attached.
What kind of person does that?
Well, what I found,
who's got time to? My God! So
what I found out over time was that there was a WhatsApp group of librarians that had worked. This group existed just to track everything I was doing. So I don't know who was in the group exactly, but I do know because I heard from a colleague at another university that this person had seen the group and was asked to join it.
But surely it's racist to put that in some sort of reference and list.
I know of the structures. That's all very, very the ultimate symbolic whiteness. Rows and columns, right? Whatever. Okay. Yeah. So I know.
Sorry, you have to poke fun at them. You have to.
You have to. I know. So what happened was eventually, when I finally got the spreadsheet and broke them down, and I had a couple of reasonable people looking at them with me saying, you didn't do anything wrong here. But just to give you a couple of examples, I don't know if you remember this at the time, there was this charity called Endometriosis South Coast, somewhere near Brighton, not that that's a big surprise.
Brighton's just awful.
I know. So they had, as someone who's lived with endometriosis my whole life, it's affected my life in a lot of ways. And so I've been, over the years, looking at what is actually happening. There's never been any sort of cure or treatment or whatever. And so when this came out that they had appointed a new CEO of Endometriosis South Coast, who was a man who had fathered children in the past, and for a women's disease which affects the uterus and things around the uterus, and you can't have it otherwise. This individual had now decided to start wearing a dress and makeup and call himself Steph. And this was the best person for the job. And I posted that and I said, what, out of half the population in this planet, where it would have been potentially a better option for someone who is now identifying as a woman, who's fathered children and is probably still fully intact as a male, I'm guessing, I don't know, but probably, I don't know. But for whatever, he has never had, he, she, whatever pronouns you want to use, has never had it to be, okay, thank you.
He for me. For me, he's a man.
Thank you. Yes, TERFs rule. Has never and will never have endometriosis. So why is this the best person for this charity? I was in trouble for that tweet. I was on the spreadsheet because I had misgendered Steph, and so never mind my entire life and how this disease has affected me.
You correctly sexed him.
Yeah. So he was misgendered, and or she was misgendered according to them. And so
he's
this was
misgendered, but like, no, he's correctly sexed.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this was the kind of thing that I was getting into trouble for, and so also because I was starting to call out the sexual content in children's books, saying that this wasn't appropriate. Like as a librarian, I'm a librarian in my heart. I always will be. But I believe anyone over age can read whatever they want. Like, it's not, if you want to read porn, consume whatever, that is not up to me. That my job is to protect access to information as a librarian. But 5-year-olds do not need to know how to have sex, period.
No.
Whether or not it's trans, whether or not it's gay, whatever, LGBT, they just do not need to have that information. But the globalist organizations, and we have evidence of this, the World Health Organization, the UN, they take the position that children are born as sexual beings, and therefore there's really no young enough age to introduce them to sexual content. I personally don't agree. And as a librarian,
it sounds pedophilic.
It is. It's grooming. It's pedophile. It is. And I've done a lot of reporting on this on UK Column. So if people are interested in the work I've done around this and continue to do, I've done a lot of work on educational curriculum and library books and pushing this agenda on children, transing children, all of it. So. Yeah. I'm now free to do that, luckily, because I work for a true free speech organization. But in the past, I was told I was not being inclusive because I didn't think that this was right. And
not being inclusive of pedophiles.
No, right. And one of the things
surely if there's anyone we can exclude, it's pedophiles.
Absolutely, 100%. And you can see in some of this children's literature that they're putting out. I've done a lot of articles that I've written an article on this, and I've had this in the news, and the Granddad's Pride and the Granddad's Camper books, which are
I've seen that one.
It's total grooming. You've got a little child going out in a camper with Grandpa, right? And Grandpa is gay, and he has recently lost his gay lover, and he's very sad. And so the grandchild goes out and has this wonderful idea to go to Pride periods and go out camping with Granddad, because now he feels better. Now, you tell me what that is. Like, that is... anyways, yeah. So I was
the child's not there to look after his grandfather after he's lost. It's just not...
Yeah, and you'll know this as a counselor. That's called parentification.
Yeah. And you don't want them to be exposed to Pride either.
I know.
Pride's for adults.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to do your Pride parades, and that's one thing. But the more and more in the Drag Queen Story Hour, that they're putting in, that they've been doing in libraries for years, where the person comes in dressed in drag and supposedly reads story time, but then they bring children onto the stage and they have them twerk and they throw money at them, and it's like that. And then you have the parents sitting there laughing and thinking it's cute. It's not. It's disgusting. And so I was starting to call the stuff out, but I was being told that I wasn't being inclusive, and that therefore I was breaking the ethical code that we have as librarians under CILIP, which is the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, that I was not being inclusive. And I, even when I came up with counter arguments, like I cited human rights Article 7, is Article 7, and even putting into the, regardless of my religious views, bringing up the religious elements of it, which might be for people who are Christians, that they don't believe. And these were just things I was saying, that if we're going to be inclusive, we need to include Christians who don't believe in homosexuality. We need to be inclusive of Muslims who don't believe in any of this either. Having been a woman who visited Saudi Arabia in 2019, where I had to stay covered up and be respectful and follow their laws, which I had no problem doing because I'm in their country and I'm going to be respectful, even though I don't believe in covering myself. I'm still going to do it because I'm in their country. And I brought all those forward, and I said, if I had landed at the airport in Riyadh and said I wasn't covering up because I identify as a man, do you think that would have gone well for me? No. And I wouldn't have thought of doing that. No. And so why is it not inclusive to those students or to those people who use our libraries, who are Muslims, who are, here in this country, or Christians, or anyone in this country that has their own religious beliefs, personal beliefs that maybe they don't believe that that's right? How is it so we're not being inclusive to them, but we're being inclusive to these other people? And if you're not inclusive to these people because you want to think about these other people or even your own beliefs, then you're the problem. And therefore you're now violating the code of conduct, the professional code of ethics. Yeah.
This is the ultimate problem with inclusivity. It excludes people.
Yeah, it's exclusion, inclusion. It's reversed, right? It's actually exclusion. Yeah. And so these were the things that were coming up in all of these kinds of tweets and other tweets. And so essentially what happened in the next step in the story was that was in November. We went back and forth by email, and then in the new year I had to go to a mediation session with my professional body, members of my professional body. And they hired a professional mediator, and it was 4 hours of them, saying, well, you misgendered this person, and you said this, and you said this, and this is, and it was horrible. And I tried so hard to be strong, and eventually I broke down crying. I couldn't help it, because it was 4 hours of them telling me what a horrible person I was, and I was, I had misgendered people, and I was racist, and I was all this, and
they sound like bullies.
Yeah. At the end of it, I said, okay, fine, I'm done. I don't want to do this. I'm taking down my Twitter. I don't want to do this. I don't believe in this, but I also just want to be left alone. And they said, oh, well, we don't want you to take down your Twitter, but if you tweet one more thing that somebody complains about, we'll have to investigate again. So what option did I really have? So I took down my Twitter. And then the next thing that happened was I received a letter that I was being investigated by. So that was in Scotland. I got a letter from the headquarters in London saying that I was being investigated, then at a UK-wide level through CILIP. And I was asked to go through disciplinary procedure for an article that I'd written for the Scottish Union for Education. And I think that was it. There were, so many things. So one of the things that people didn't like that I'd written was about being against decolonization. So I'm not sure if the audience knows what decolonization means, but what that means is the process of basically changing, erasing, replacing British culture is what it means in this country. So decolonizing the curriculum in schools and universities means it's too white, it's too oppressive. We can't have anything about white men, God forbid straight white men for any reason. They're terrible. So we're replacing, and that's not to say that, I certainly believe in adding perspectives from other countries. Of course, we want to learn as much as possible from as many people around the world as possible. So adding, enhancing, enriching experience is fabulous. But ultimately, I'm a librarian living in Britain. We need to preserve history, culture, tradition, everything that exists in this country. And not everything that every country does is always good, and I'm not saying that. The point is that, if you are a librarian and your job is to preserve the written record of knowledge, do you, for example, record and save and make access to Hitler's autobiography, Mein Kampf? You do, because you can learn from it. And this is true for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to learn from our mistakes. We don't want to change them because they're offensive or somebody might fall apart if they see it. And the decolonization agenda in libraries is really terrible. They were some of the first to do it. And what that means is that they are replacing things in libraries that have been in British libraries for ages because they are now considered too white and too oppressive. So to give you an example, they have, in the museums in Oxford, they have had signs of apology up because they're saying that mummies are white and apologizing for the fact that they are made of plaster of Paris, which is a white material. So we can't have statues, we can't have mummies because they're white, statues are white. So that's the museums. In the library collections, we're taking away things that are considered to be, well, that's a dead white man, we don't want to highlight. So buildings at the University of Edinburgh have been renamed because we can't honor the contributions that happened during the Scottish Enlightenment. Never mind what that did for the world in terms of science and progress. We are now changing those names into neutral names because we can't have buildings named after those racist straight white men any longer because that's bad.
They're racist.
They're racist. They're racist. They were, yeah. Library catalog terms are being changed because they're saying words that have been used to search for materials in libraries are now racist. So we can't, for example... Such
as what?
Okay, so this is one that was on a webinar from the University of Manchester Library, which is freely available on YouTube. They decided that they had I think it was 19th century Chinese art. And they decided that the term that they were using for costumes that they wore at the time as part of the period clothing that were in the art collections, the word costume was now offensive. So they changed the word costume to traditional dress because we can't say costume.
Why not?
It's offensive. Racist.
Why is it offensive? I don't understand.
Problematic. They like the word problematic. And so the problem with that, of course, is that anyone who has, let's say that you're a longtime scholar of Chinese art and you've always known to search for the word costume, that word isn't going to work anymore. So you can't find it because you don't know that they've changed the word to traditional dress. So they're changing the language in the catalogs. They're changing the nature of the collections. The last time I was at the British Library, the main location in London near King's Cross, they had exhibitions about LGBT people in the collections. And so it was like they'd cherry-picked little bits and pieces of, oh, look, here's this person from 100 years ago. It looks like a man wearing a dress. Look, trans have always existed. Even the books in the British Library bookshop were washed with rainbows and trans colors, even in the children's section of the bookshop. It's everywhere. And, yeah.
I recently went to a museum in Leeds and I just couldn't believe it. It didn't have anything about the history of Leeds. Very little. Like, I was expecting to learn about, like, steel and cotton and stuff like that, and it wasn't.
No.
It was so woke. Take all the woke stuff off, and I was just horrified.
Yeah.
Like, where's the history of this city?
Yeah, exactly. And we all need to learn from all of our cities And everyone has, all civilizations, all cities, all have, good and bad points about them. But we need to learn from all of it. It's still part of the history. We can hopefully learn from mistakes and go forward. That doesn't mean that we get rid of them or that we erase them or that we erase the existence of men and women that have shaped this country to be, and our cities and everything to where we are now. It's all part of how we got to where we are today. And that's what we need to be able to understand if we want to understand history and preserve tradition and culture and memory. But that is now no longer the thing to be doing, and it's very, very dangerous. And as a librarian, I've always taken my ethics very seriously, which is to preserve access to information and make it available to people. And that's all I ever wanted to do when I became a librarian, was to help people find things. That was really all I ever wanted to do. And then I get caught in the middle of this ideological battle and I lose my career because of this. So with that decolonization thing and other things that people were offended about, once I got that call to the disciplinary hearing, I just resigned from CILIP, and I said, I don't pay you people to discipline me, and I'm not giving you any more of my money. And so that meant that I lost my presidency. It meant I lost all of the other very senior positions I held within CILIP. And CILIP accredits the library and information programs in this country. They are the accrediting body. So you have to align with that. You have to teach what they consider to be, the things that meet their accreditation standards. And we have a reciprocal agreement with the American Library Association. And since I did my degrees in America, I'm qualified, or I don't know, was qualified to practice here, and vice versa. And so when I was teaching library programs here in Scotland, I live in England now, but when I was in Scotland, it was the same. So where I was recruiting American students to come study here and saying, hey, come over here. I run this program. You can have this amazing international experience for a year. You get your MSc, which you need to have to be a librarian. You need to have an MSc in a year here versus a year and a half to 2 years in America. Plus you get to spend a year in Scotland and have this experience. And so I recruited a lot of American students. Had a wonderful time at that point doing it all, but once I lost my affiliation with CILIP, it was a huge professional decision, because that meant that I could no longer be part of any of that. And so that was a major decision, but I just couldn't continue to be faced with all of this. So things were quiet for a while, but then over the summer, so that was like, springtime, I guess, when all that, sort of late spring, early summer in 2024, when that happened. And then the summer got really weird, because I was getting invitations to go to things because of the fact that I held all these positions. Like I had been offered to go to the American Library Association conference because I held a high-level position. I was the copyright holder for all copyright standards in the UK for library cataloging, for cataloging standards, not copyright standards. And so I was invited to go there. There was only 4 copyright holders in the world, and I was one of 4 for our international cataloging standards. So that's how senior I was. And I was asked to go to the conference to have the meeting there of the copyright holders. And then that's when they started taking things away from me. So that's when my constructive dismissal started at the university. They told me, because I'd been on sick leave because of all the stress from what I'd been through with the grievance. And they said, well, you can't travel. Obviously, you're too stressed. You can't go. And I'm like, I'm not asking for money. I just need to go to these conferences, because it's my role at this time is I'm now a full professor to do these international things. No, you're too stressed. You shouldn't travel. I was asked to go to Ireland. You can't do it. Couldn't go to America. Couldn't participate in anything. They started to take away my line management. They took away my research group. They took away the program that I was developing, the proposal that I was writing to bring an international conference to my university of other information scientists, and they took it all away. and reassigned it to people that were far junior to me, that had their PhD for like 1 or 2 years compared to mine, where I've had mine since 2006 and have done nothing but work ever since then. They took it all away, saying, well, obviously, if you're stressed, you can't do this. And so they took it all away. And then when my performance review came up later in that summer, I was put on a performance improvement plan for not doing any work. And I said, how can I do work if you're taking it all away from me? And they said, well, you need to be doing, and I'm like, and so they gave me these completely unattainable objectives that you couldn't possibly measure. You know, it was like, do more of this, do more of this. And they were giving me the worst teaching assignments possible that I should not have been doing as a professor. And I was saying, I'm not saying that I'm not going to teach anymore, but don't put me in the room in front of 200 undergraduates that are mostly from overseas, really are not qualified to be at students in the UK. They just wanted the money, because that's the other thing, is that the funding of international students, where they pay twice as much to be here, you know, because in Scotland, undergraduate students don't pay at all. They don't pay any fees in Scotland if they're from Scotland, if they're called what we call home students. But if they're coming from another country, they pay $20,000 a year or something, you know. Yeah. So, that's a lot. And they're not really qualified to be there. And then at that point, because of everything going on, students were starting to write their papers using ChatGPT, and I was seeing through that. And I'm like, these students can barely write an email. There's no way they wrote this paper, because they're writing word salad at a level beyond what I could write. and I said, they said, well, you just have to mark it at face value, because we can't prove it. We can't prove that they didn't write it. And these were students, you know, speaking as a white woman. Can I say that about myself? A straight white woman? Is that allowed?
Yeah, yeah, it is for me.
Excellent.
That's what you are.
I know. So as a straight white woman, I was being placed in front of these 200 students, so that they weren't just overseas students. They were from countries that are not necessarily respectful to women. And they were not respectful to me. And I was getting a lot of stress from that because of my past of being raped by someone who was from that culture, one of those cultures. And then the way they were coming in late, falling asleep, talking on the phone during lectures, completely ignoring me, arguing with me, making me mark them as present in class when they walked in halfway through. And some of them were like doing things like blocking the doors so that I couldn't leave until I agreed to mark them as present when they came into class half an hour late eating breakfast. You know, just completely ignoring me. And I reported these behaviors. Then I was told that I needed to learn classroom management. I'm like, I've been teaching university level since, you know, 20 years, and you're telling me that I need to learn classroom management because these students can't be respectful of their professor. But it was my fault once again. So, and I couldn't even grade their writing. The marking was ridiculous because none of it even made any sense, and it was either unreadable or it was AI. And I'm like, I can't even mark this stuff, right? And so I was put first on an informal improvement plan. And then a few weeks later, they said, I had another meeting with HR and my boss. And they said, well, you obviously haven't met the criteria for the informal improvement plan. So we are now moving you to a formal improvement plan. And then a few weeks later, I got a phone call from my boss. And she said, I can't tell you the details now. You're going to have to wait for this to come from HR, but you are being placed on charges of gross misconduct by the university. And
for what reason?
Well, I didn't know for about 2 weeks. I had to wait and wait and wait. And that's part of the process.
Shocking. Process
is the punishment, right? So I had to wait for 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what happened, eventually I got the letter. It was because of something I said on my colleague Ben Rubin, who works with me on UK Column. He's another presenter. He has his own podcast, and I was on his podcast. It was just a little thing we did on the weekend. Probably like 10 people watched it. Nothing against Ben Rubin, but you know, it wasn't. It wasn't
huge.
Yeah, and that's nothing against anyone. It just was, but you could tell that they were watching me. There's no other way that they would have known that I had said this. I made a comment about, I was talking about the things going on in universities and libraries, and I made a comment about pansexuality or something, and just sort of the idea of that being sort of this radicalization that I was seeing happening with young people and all this. And so that was the reason for the charge, was because they said that I was now a risk to the students for thinking that being talked to by students about their sexual preferences and about their transing, and that I didn't feel comfortable hearing this stuff, that I was now a risk to the students because I was transphobic, and that was the reason for the charges.
I've not heard of safeguarding.
Yeah, I know, right? And I said, well, how are you, again, going back to what I said earlier, how are we not safeguarding or looking out for, we had a large number of Muslim students. We had a large number of students that, why is that not a risk for them? Why is that not a risk for anyone else who just doesn't want to hear it? This whole bring your whole self to work. No, leave your sexuality at home. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what you do in your spare time. Nobody needs
to know.
No, just leave that at home. That is not, I wouldn't come talk about anything that I did or didn't want with anyone. That's not what we do in a professional academic setting. It's not appropriate. But it's that whole, we have to talk about this. And, the number of students that I had just in the last few years of my academic career who were coming and saying, I'm now a they, them, or this is my dead name, or all this. And then that, one more thing that you have to track, like you don't have enough to think about already as a lecturer. Now I'm supposed to remember pronouns. Yeah. It just got to be a bit too much. And so, that's where I really, with the gross misconduct charges, I went back off on sick leave because I really lost it at that point. And so I had this was at the same time as the formal improvement plan and then the gross misconduct charges. And I'm like, oh my God, I see where this is going, right? And so
it's really traumatic.
Incredibly
really traumatic,
especially for someone who had my entire life had been this, right? And so I went back on sick leave, and I had the note from the GP saying they recognized this was too much, and so eventually they kept cutting down my pay, and then down to nothing, where I had no income, because they decided that my sick leave was unexcused, according to my boss. And so I had
outrageous.
I had no income. The only money that I had coming in at the time was the freelance money that I was getting from doing UK column news, working as a freelance journalist for them. So I was getting no university income, and that was not enough to sustain the place I was living. Because I was living luckily I was only renting, but I was living in a place that, a professor would be able to afford, no problem. But when you're just, making a little bit as a freelancer and you've lost that primary source of income, you can no longer, not even sure how you're going to buy your groceries. Yeah. So I ended up going into debt. Because I had to survive. And so all of that together, and I just felt like my entire world had crashed. Sorry. So, that was, by that time, that was January this year, January 2025. And in December of 24, I had received a call from Mike Robinson at UK Column asking me if I would be interested in working for them full time. I'm like, yes, please. So it was
what amazing timing.
It really was. Well, they knew what I was going through, and Brian Garish was incredibly supportive of me. I have to say, Brian is amazing, and he kept saying, "Stick with us. We're going to work some things out." This was when I was freelance, and he knew what was happening to me. He was kind of, guiding me through it, and eventually that was kind of like where it came to was, I could say some things while I was going through it. If it's just, sort of straight reporting, here's what they're doing. Here's the children's books that are out. Here's what the professional bodies are doing. But he said just, once you are completely out, then you are truly free to say whatever needs to be said and really go after the whole thing and really expose what's happening. So it was right before Christmas when I got that phone call from Mike, and it was like the best Christmas present imaginable to know that this would be coming to an end. And so in January, everyone came back and negotiated a start date in the 1st of February, and resigned from the university effective immediately. I'm like, well, there's no reason to hang on. They're not paying me anyway. So I just hired a removal company because I had a lot of books in my office, and even though because of everything that happened, I hadn't been spending much time in my office the last 2 years. But I just wanted to get all my stuff packed quickly, so I paid somebody to go pack up my books, bring them back to my house, resigned effective immediately, got my P45, and then started with the column full time on the 1st of February. So it's still surreal when I talk about it, when I still think about how this all happened, where it ended up in the end. I'm still going, I'm still seeing counseling to kind of process this, but then, as you'll know better than I will as a counselor, how that all ties into other traumas that have happened in your past, right? So I've had relationship traumas. I've had family traumas. I was adopted, and so that's kind of that original abandonment issue of never feeling like you belong anywhere. And then I thought that my profession was where I belonged, and then it turned out
you've had that taken away.
Yeah. And so past relationships I've had with men, my relationship with other people in my family, all of those things that I won't go into in detail here, but all of that just kind of comes together. And when you lost the one thing that you had, I never had children. I never have, I'm currently completely alone except for my 2 little dogs. And so all of those things put together, it compounds and it builds, and then you have to, so I'm now going through the process of working through all those things, maybe for the first time in my life in a very real way, to understand that I am now I'm not who I was as a result of these things, but at the end, I've come out stronger. I now have a platform I never had as an academic. I now have thousands of people who watch UK Column, who look to us to help them through their things, their dark times, their questions, their worries about where the world is going. I try to be positive on the show. I try to give people hope, because I always feel like you can't feel the joy of life if sometimes maybe you don't feel it as much if you haven't felt the loss and the sadness that I've been through. And people say, well, you're so bubbly on the show. How do you do that? Right? But it's like, because I know what it feels like to feel terrible. And so I don't want anyone else to feel that way. And so I feel like the only way that we can get through this battle that we're in, not only my internal battles, but the things that we're in as a society. And I've been saying this in talks I've been doing recently in live on digital ID situation, like being against digital ID, that the way to fight this is to love each other, to give each other a hug, to truly be there for one another. And that's the only way we're going to do it, because if we just... I
always tell my clients to look for joy. Look for the things that are, even if it's really small, like in the autumn when the leaves change colour, or when you see the sun shining, or whatever it is. It's the tiny little things that make up your day that you've got to notice around all this awful darkness that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to do that, and that's the best way to fight it, I think. And Brian talks about this as well, that Brian believes that we're in a spiritual battle, and I believe that too, regardless of anyone's religious beliefs, that it is a good and evil battle. The way to fight the evil is to bring out the good. And so by loving each other, by not giving up on community, by accepting people for just being people. I was at a protest that I spoke at in Carlisle this past weekend, and we had a counter-protest group set up that were all there prepared to, scream at us that we were far-right bigots. And
were they paid for by the government?
I'm sure they were, and I think that's why they wear masks, because it's really illegal to wear a mask at a protest, but they do it because, otherwise you'll see that the same people who were protesting in Leeds are now protesting in Carlisle, but if they wear a mask, you can't prove it, right? So, but we kept it, it was very peaceful. It was amazing because there was a group of teenage boys who were there listening to me, and we unfortunately see that there's not a lot of young people always participating, but this group of boys, when I said to the crowd, give each other a hug, love each other, it was like these 6 teenage boys, they'll give each other this big group hug. It was so cute. I was like, I did that. I told them they listened to me, these teenage boys. It was wonderful. And we didn't have any problems with the counter-protesters because the way that the organizers did this deliberately, where the crowds, the back of the audience, their backs were facing the counter-protesters, and the speakers, including me, were facing them, they didn't approach us. The person that I was with at the protest on Saturday went over to talk to one of them, and he said, why is it that you think we're racist? Do you see any racists here? I don't see any racists here. There's no racism going on. And then a policeman came over and said that, they don't want to talk to you. Leave them alone. And he was like, I was just trying to open a conversation. I was just asking if there were any racists here because I didn't see any. And we talked about that later. And I thought, well, that's actually the police actually denying the freedom of speech on both sides, right? Because he's telling the person that I know from my protest, well, you can't talk to that person, but also telling the person for the counter-protest. If that person for the counter-protest wanted to not talk to the person that I knew, he could have said that. But at the same time, he also had the right to maybe have a conversation. But that's what they want, is they want the division. They don't want us to talk to each other. And that's
good to talk to each other, but this is the thing. It seems like the same group of people who are going to all these counter demonstrations, like, when we have like the Let Women Speak events.
Yeah.
I was really confused the first time I went because they all had signs saying racist, and I was like, we're not even talking about that. We're here to talk about women. Yeah. Why are you talking about racism? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, the hate on the other side is ridiculous. Like, I'm not sure if you knew about this when at the University of Edinburgh we had a screening of Adult Human Female, the film. It was a couple of years ago now. And it took like 3 tries.
They barricaded it, didn't they?
Yeah, we had 3. Finally got it shown on the 3rd try, and I was part of all that. And they finally had the ropes around for the TRAs to scream at us as we were walking in, and we were just walking in like normal people. We weren't protesting and screaming; they were. And there were some older ladies there. That one older lady I talked to who said that she was there because she was worried about the future that is being created for her grandchildren and what her granddaughters are going to have to face growing up now. And so she had that concern. And then in the meantime, these men in dresses are screaming at her, trans rights are human rights. And she was just like, I just want to see the film. These people why are they doing this? And, this was and it was just that kind of behavior. It's not something I've ever seen at any of the protests that I've gone to. And this thing about us being far-right bigots, conspiracy theorists, all the stuff they throw at us, again, that's just the narrative that they want to push to shut us up. That's all it is.
I mean, the way that the police handle their side compared to ours, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about what happened in Newcastle at one of the lockdown protests where the police just went rogue. It was horrific. I wasn't actually there. I've been out for the day. It was like August. Was it 2021? And I'd been to London on the Saturday, which is why I didn't go to that one, but I would have been there had I not been to London, to the big one. And the dogs attacked them. There was mounted police hitting women and children with their batons. It was horrendous. They wouldn't let anybody leave. This one of the police dogs ripped a chunk out of one of the bloke's shoulders as he was trying to get away from it. And there's like video clips of that. It was so I came back home to see all this footage on Twitter, and it was horrible because I knew them all. It was just awful.
That is, you
like
know,
women with broken ribs off the police. I'm like, what did you do? Like nothing justifies that. But what on earth did you do for them to be that provoked? But they hadn't done anything. And it was because the protest before, which I had been at, they didn't want to let us march down Northumberland Street, and we broke through the lines, and they didn't like it because we got the better of them. Like middle-aged women running away from the police, I couldn't believe that. Like,
yeah,
what on earth has my life become?
I know.
I just wanted to walk down the street in Newcastle. Why am I not allowed? Why am I now running away from the police who think I'm a criminal?
Wait, you know, I will mention the Rumble channel, We the People Northeast here. Just a quick plug for them because full disclosure, some of the people that are on that channel are my friends now that I live here in the Northeast. But they did some amazing work on the lockdown protests, covering the protests in Newcastle and surrounding areas. And they've been active again a bit, and I've been working with them. We actually a few weeks ago, we went to Newcastle on a Saturday when it was when Ben Habib was there speaking for the Advance UK party he's launching.
Yeah, I was watching that.
Yeah, so we were there that day, and we didn't go to the protest. We didn't go to Ben Habib's event, but there was also supposed to have been a UKIP thing that day.
Yeah, there was a UKIP thing. Yeah, I was watching it on the internet.
Yeah, so we tried to get there because my friend from the channel, a couple of my friends from the group, the channel, and we tried to get down to the quayside, and we couldn't get there, like physically from Central Station because of the leftist counter protesters that were screaming in the street, and they had a police line, and they were screaming at the police about being racist, and that the police were protecting racists, and there's this police line, and some of the leftist protesters were like literally pushing the police, and I got caught up in a tiny bit of that. I mean, I was fine, but then, so what happened was they said, well, we're going to move everyone, so we started walking up towards the Newbridge Hotel, the so-called migrant hotel. And so they had one group, so like the leftist protesters walking up one street, and then they had the sort of UKIP march walking up another street. And there was all kinds of weird stories going on, circulating at the time. Oh, Tommy Robinson's here. Oh, Katie Hopkins is here.
They're both even come.
No, I know. And all these things were going around, and so they were doing, so what happened was when we got up there by the migrant hotel, and so then we got between the police lines because there's a police line for each side. So we walked straight through because I wasn't participating that day. I was just watching and recording, and I did some reporting on it. So we walked through between the two police lines because I was like, oh, I'm media, because we have these UK column lanyards I was wearing, and the people doing the camera work. And so we got in between the police lines, and you could see how they were lining us up, and actually they're just far enough that the groups could communicate with one another, but not so far that any physical violence was going to happen because there were too many police standing around. So you have the people with all the British flags doing the Tommy Robinson chant, "Hey, Tommy, Tommy," right? And they're doing that on one side, and then you have the leftist protesters, "Refugees are welcome here," and you have this back and forth going, right? "Refugees are welcome here, Tommy, 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 Tommy." It was just like this back and forth thing, and they were like, each had their own stories, and so we got some footage of that, because once you're between the police lines, you can see that it was meant to be that way according to whoever was running it, because otherwise they didn't get close enough to get physical with one another, but they also were able to see one another, and then it all just kind of ended and everyone just kind of gave up and went home at a certain point in time. So it was interesting to like not be participating and just kind of see how it is all orchestrated. It was a fascinating day. It was exhausting to watch it all, but because we were there for several hours. It is once you remove yourself from it and you realize that actually in the end we're not coming from places that are that different. I mean, obviously on some issues we are, that some of us don't believe that men can become women, and some of us don't believe that healthy girls should have their healthy breasts chopped off, but in the end we all are just trying to get somewhere where we can return to the place where they're not trying to control all of us. That's what I think. And these issues with the digital ID and using immigration as a weapon, that's not the only thing that's going on with digital ID. The digital ID is for total control. It's not about, and they're saying, oh, look, these people on boats. Well, actually, the people coming in on boats are a very small minority of the people that are coming into this country. If you look at the actual statistics, the rest of them are coming in through planes and other ways. It's not just the people on the boats, but they're using them as emotional leverage, right? So, that's one thing, just to be aware of the larger agenda at play, and that's what we need to all be fighting together. Not getting divided and not doing all this and all that, and also just being aware of reality. Yes, men can't become women, women can't become men. It doesn't work that way.
It's really interesting though when you challenge them, because like I remember after that weekend I saw someone posted something on LinkedIn about how wonderful it was to be on the right side, and he was on the counter protest, and how they defeated it and all this. And I just went, hang on a minute, and I challenged what he'd said. I can't remember the detail now, but I challenged what he said and he didn't reply to me. Because he didn't have that's not what happened. He totally misrepresented what had happened. And when I said, no, this is what happened, because I saw it live on the internet, he didn't reply. And everyone was going, oh yes, you're so wonderful. Yes, we're so great that we're proper virtue signaling. But they got all the details wrong. And when I corrected them, they just ignored me because they haven't got an argument.
No.
About what we are saying.
No, they don't. And that's, I interviewed Steve James recently on UK Column. It was a really good discussion because he's the Edge of the Matrix channel. Edge of the Matrix,
I met him a few weeks ago at the Darlington Nurses Tribunal.
Yeah, he was there with Kelly J. Keane, and they were interviewing the poor man that was...
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, yeah.
I was on his channel as well.
Oh, really? Yeah, No, he's great. So his interview with me went out last week. And, him just trying to talk sense into people. And, he's said before in his videos, they don't have an argument. That's why they get so angry, because they don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Absolutely.
Maybe true about the people that were the mob, whoever they were. I'm sure that they have a certain look to them, the blue hair and the bad skin and the massive glasses and the septum piercing. Gotta have that, all those markers of a true TRA. They have a look.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm sure that Steve is very well educated in spotting them from miles away, because he has to be.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on my channel as well, so hopefully that'll happen. But Diane, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really insightful conversation. I've loved talking to you.
You too.
Is there anything else that you've already promoted UK Column? Is there anything else that you wanted to promote before we wind things up?
I just want to say there's lots of organizations out there doing things, and this is the most important thing to do is, obviously watch UK Column for all your news. No, I'm just kidding. But the other organizations that I am participating in, there are some that are, if you're trying to fight gender ideology, especially for children, I'm working with groups. For example, there's one called Protect and Teach, which is based in Devon, but they work around the country. Scottish Union for Education, of course. There's another group, Common Knowledge Edinburgh, which I'm on the executive committee for. Academics for Academic Freedom, if you're an academic going through what I have just been through. Free Speech Union, of course, if you need support. So I've had affiliations with all of those, and we're all there to support each other. And that's the final thing I just want to say is to, as I've been saying at my talks recently, to remember to give each other a hug, to love each other, and remember that I believe if we all work together, that good will always win over evil, and that includes ending gender ideology. It includes counseling freedom of speech. It includes the rights of women to have our own spaces where we feel safe. All of those things that we need to protect in this world if we continue to work together, make each other aware, and go forward from here as sort of a united voice. I believe, and I want to believe, that we will win, and we just have to keep going every day. So I think I will end it there.
Yeah, definitely. What a good message to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to speak directly to the women listening who might be struggling in silence. So maybe you're living with the fallout of a husband or partner who's suddenly decided he's a woman, leaving you feeling confused, coerced, or even pressured into things you never consented to. Maybe you're a mother with a daughter or a son who now says they're trans, and you're carrying the heartbreak of that loss without anyone around you really understanding. Or maybe you've been cancelled, silenced, or bullied in your workplace, in your family, or even online, and you're left questioning your reality, your confidence, and your sense of self. If any of that sounds familiar, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and you don't have to keep pushing through it on your own strength, because that's exactly why I offer counselling for women. It's a private, safe, and non-judgmental space where you can say the unsayable. And I know how hard it can be to put words to feelings of betrayal, grief, or anger, especially when the world around you just wants you to be quiet. In our sessions, you'll be heard, believed, and supported without judgment. My work is grounded in person-centred counselling, but I also bring in other tools like inner child work, trauma-informed approaches, and relational models to help you uncover what's really going on beneath the surface. Together we'll explore how the past is shaping the present, untangle the dynamics of coercive or narcissistic relationships, and give you space to grieve losses that others might dismiss or deny. The women that I work with often tell me that our sessions give them clarity, strength, and the ability to start making decisions that honour their own needs, sometimes for the first time in years. And so whether you're trying to rebuild after coercion, come to terms with ambiguous loss, or simply reconnect with who you are, therapy can be the place where you start to feel like yourself again. And I offer a free, no obligation consultation so that you can see if working together feels like the right fit. There's no pressure, just a chance to talk about what you need and how I might be able to help. You can find out more at kellyoliverdougal.co.uk. You deserve a space where you are truly heard, and if this speaks to you, I'd be honoured to walk alongside you on your journey of healing and strength.